Hi everyone, my name's Leslie Webble. I've been a product manager for 3 years and I ran my own startup for two. Today we're going to talk about user types in management. And before I get into the types of users, we're going to talk about a book called Crossing the Chasm and what is called the technology adoption cycle. It's a model that describes how technology, even culture, can kind of spread ideas between individuals and groups and communities. And I talked about this in my last video, a little bit of its history. But what this model describes is some key types of users: innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. I'm going to go into more details about these users, but before I do that, I want to go over about some product types. Now, just referencing Crossing the Chasm, I'll have a link in the description. There's different types of innovations. There is a discontinuous innovation or a disruptive innovation. These products and services change our behavior. One day I'm walking and I will need to learn a new set of behavior on how to ride a bike. You have to learn that. Sure, the same thing is movement, but you have to learn that new set of behavior from walking to riding a bike. Now, the next one is continuous or sustaining innovation, right? Products or services that extend existing behavior, upgrading the product, but they don't really change behavior. For instance, walking, I can get a new pair of Nike shoes, and that's like an upgrade for my feet, or New Balance, or Synchrony, whatever it may be. And that can help me walk faster, feel more comfortable, help with status or brand. Another kind of innovation or product type I think that we have to think about is products, that mimicking products. When you're in Walmart, right, and you shop for coffee grounds, there's a lot of products that are the same. They don't really offer upgrade and they don't really change user behavior. I mean, you could argue the upgrade is that like the branding is different and they're targeted towards a customer segment, like Black Rifle. I think it's called Black Rifle Coffee. In general, that is targeted, I think, more kind of like a guy's coffee in the realm of like maybe some military background there. There could be a whole persona, customer persona of who they're targeting, who they're for. Folgers is really cheap and it's just for the average working person. And then, you kind of have Starbucks coffee, Dunkin' Donut coffee that people are just familiar with from buying their products and then buying that at Walmart. So outside of that, coffee grounds are coffee grounds. That isn't really going to change my behavior, how I use them. And there weren't really any significant upgrades besides maybe the change in taste and preference. That's why I call mimicking products. Um, I don't have a citation on this, just my opinion or what I think about those products. But I do think continuous and discontinuous are. I have my citation here with Crossing the Chasm, so you can kind of go read about that. Now, all these products kind of place a demand on the customer or consumer, right? For me to learn how to ride a bike, there is going to be some time involved and a cost where I have to absorb that new behavior to use that, right? Or even, there could be alternatives like EVs, for example. There was a cost to implement that. We needed charging stations across the country. So there's a cost or a change to society and our infrastructure to facilitate that new innovation. Now, there's that kind of, this is kind of why the innovation model exists, right? Basically, there's a cost to learning new behavior. So learning a new technology or even believing in that technology that it can work, it takes time. And that's where the model kind of comes in. Now let's go back to the model really quick. Like I said earlier, there are innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. And it's pretty self-explanatory, but I'm going to go into detail about them. So innovators are people who are technology enthusiasts. I'm a technology enthusiast. When there's a new feature or a product comes out, I'm honestly, I'm instantly excited, maybe even foolishly excited. I know the Rabbit R1 came out like last year. I saw the product launch and I was like, wow, that's so cool. However, obviously it was kind of a bad idea and bad product for various competitive reasons. One could argue, um, obviously, but that's who those group of customers are. And depending on your market and industry, they're usually a really small minority of them, right? If I'm selling B2B software, SaaS software, and I build a completely new product, your product needs to speak to these guys immediately. Salesforce, for instance, has to essentially, their first customer kind of use their product for free. And their innovators are usually okay with buggy products because they're excited about the functionality of it, right? Even if the product is kind of bad, they're kind of excited. Now let's move on to early adopters. Early adopters are visionaries. Let me go down to the section here. All right, they're people who are buying into new products or concepts. Sometimes they just want to communicate that they are innovators themselves and they're bringing new technology to the forefront of their company. It's just another customer profile, or what they say are psychological profiles or demographics. That's what the innovators, early adopters, late majority all represent. They're kind of customer segments. And really, visionaries, they're interested in what potential the product has in itself. When people talk about crypto, they're really interested as an early adopter what that means for the rest of the industry, for supply chain and other companies and other use cases, right? However, I think when we move on to the late majority, early majority or pragmatist, this is where um, customers form one of the largest segments within this model, right? The majority of customers and markets kind of fit in this pragmatic um, part of the bell chart. And they're similar to early adopters. They want the competitive advantage of that product and what that vision can provide, but they really do not want to take the risk. They're early in the sense of they see the new technology, but they're not going to use it unless they kind of see evidence that it works. Either increases revenue, lower the cost, or keeps them legally compliant. There needs to be some sort of benefit they have for their own behavior, their own workflow. So most of the time, they're kind of a wait and see before buying. And this is sort of where the chasm comes in, if you're familiar already. And I'll go into that into the next video, talk about crossing the chasm, what these gaps are, what the chasms are between these different customer segments or profiles. And then finally, you have the late majority or conservatives, or people who are, they're comfortable with technology, but they only will buy the product until it becomes the standard. And what that means is that they need another company to use that product to validate before ever buying it. It's like saying if I was Pfizer, I don't want to use something unless Merck and Sanofi are using the same exact technology that they are. And then that's where you kind of see testimonials or those logos of other companies on a person's website. It's to kind of communicate to the late majority that, hey, look, everyone's using our product and you should too. And that can also kind of be a hard sell moving from the early to late majority. But usually once you get to the early majority, you're kind of entering the growth stage of what your product is doing, and moving into these kind of customer segments are not as difficult because they have use cases. And then finally, you have the laggards. They actually form a minority on this chart. Their customers and companies, they don't want to use the new technology at all. They will hold out until the last minute, or that product is baked into another product, a CPU chip inside of a computer that they bought off the shelf. They don't really know what CPU chips are, and honestly, they might never ever get around to buying a new latest chip because they rather just buy a whole new computer. So it's good to understand where your customers come from, where they kind of fit on this profile, because they're not like everyone. It can be kind of difficult for somebody to learn how to build their own computer. So that's why they might buy Apple products where it's out of the box for them. And that's the benefit of kind of Apple's product there for users. It's really kind of just the tail end of people who really heard about it and end up using it. But the EVs, for example, some people might hold out on EVs until they become economically cheaper. EVs right now, a majority of them are very expensive without having credits to cover the cost of that EV. And the infrastructure is still developing. So laggards do have some reasons, but they're not going to be really the target customer for your product at the end of the day, right? You're really aiming to get to the early majority or the late majority within the product cycle. So those are the types of customers. Next time we're going to talk about crossing the chasm, and we're going to kind of talk about how Jeffrey A. Moore and his organization uh, kind of looked at this model and helped high tech companies like SaaS and B2B companies essentially help them cross the chasm. And this chasm is where so many startup products tend to die and not really make it with their customers. So thank you for watching. One thing before you go, I just want to say if you have time, please subscribe. That helps out a lot. A like button too. Also, sign up for my ebook. I'm writing one. Hopefully, I'm going to get the first edition out by the summer, and it's going to be like super cheap and affordable there. And yeah, not much else I can think of. If you have any feedback, I love feedback. Yeah, that's all I can think of. So thank you so much. Have a great weekend.